Immigration, the war on the American people. Part 2, coming up next on Deceptions of the Ages News. Welcome to Deceptions of the Ages News. This is part 2 of our two-part series, Immigration, the War on the American People. Now, before we get started, let me just thank all of our subscribers. We have had so many subscribers during the past few months. It's really been amazing, and I just want to send a thanks out to everybody who's subscribed, and not only who's subscribed, but have left comments in our comments section. Now, I encourage you, if no matter where your political views lie, to read my source for this information for the video, my book, Deceptions of the Ages, Mormons, Freemasons, and Extraterrestrials, and I should have put a quote around Mormons. So that is where my information is coming from if you want to check on that and if you want to check on the sources. Also, don't forget, we could really use some more sponsorship at patreon.com/hindsight. Okay, before we get started, we need to put one thing into context, into perspective. And that is that this video is in no way about race. This video is about culture. This video is about common sense, and this video is about asking the questions why. Why do the American people and the peoples of Europe have to get flooded with immigrants when no other totalitarian regime, China, Russia, if you go to Africa, if you go to the Middle East, those countries do not allow immigration into their countries, with very few exceptions, but one is you must be a Muslim. All right, so that is the first thing I want to point out to people who are going to say, oh, this is just about racism. No, this is really more about culturalism, and it's more about the history of the United States when people used to come here to assimilate and to become Americans, and that was a proud thing. But now people just come here to make their own stake for their country, for their part of the world, and for their culture. They have no intent of assimilating. And that is why we have part 2 of Immigration, the War on the American People. All right. Since the days of the Romans, it's been very easy. If you want to conquer somebody, you just find their enemies and you make friends with them, and then you all gang up and beat up on that person until they submit or you get the result you want. So no different in the United States today. But how did this come about? How do we have so many divergent, hateful cultures and people in the United States? Well, we went through part 1 and we talked about how the banking system was resisted by the people of the United States, but eventually they got their hooks into us in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was established under Paul Warburg, whose brother was the head of the German secret police and a Rothschild banking agent. All right, so we have had over 100 years of the system. We have had a number of crashes. We have had a number of fortunes destroyed. We have had a number of depressions. We've had a number of recessions. But even more than that, we have had wars that had to be financed, and that meant increasing the federal debt and putting the American taxpayer on the line. So that was battle won against the American people. But the battle has not yet been won, and the battle is still raging, but we have to ask ourselves, what is the end result of all this? Well, remember what I said, and remember again that this is not about racism, this is about history. In our first video, we talked about how the Rothschilds lived in Germany, and in Germany at the time, Jews were kept in ghettos. They were considered, because they were not Christians, they were not considered part of polite society, and obviously they really resented that. So without a boring history lesson, I'm just going to tell you that Amschel Rothschild and his grandfather, his father, whatever, they all amassed a fortune through hook and crook. But they amassed a major fortune, and to get more on that, you have to go back to video 1 or read Deceptions of the Ages. All right, so the banks have taken hold. In video 1, we got all the way to the end of World War I, and we start with the Cold War, where we have two powers. The Soviet Union, that was financed by American capitalists on Wall Street, like Morgan and the other people in that crowd, the Rockefellers and so on, same people that own the Federal Reserve. Okay, so we have Russia, and we have the United States, and we have the Cold War. All right, so now there's a new tactic going on, and this tactic is to just scare, as Harry Truman said in 1947, scare the hell out of the American people. How do you do that? Well, you develop an atomic bomb, and then you send the secrets out to develop it over to Russia, so then they can have a atomic bomb, and then a hydrogen bomb, and then you have an arms race, and yada, yada, yada. And so there was massive amounts of money and debt taken on to finance this arms race. And look at all the tanks and planes, and of course the wars and the people that lost their lives as basically cannon fodder, so that these people could sell their armaments. So, and I do apologize for that. I'm a veteran myself, and I mean, unfortunately, if you look into things, that's really, it's not really about ideology, it's more about people finding ways to make money and sell arms and weapons. All right, so that was the war on the American people, and that war on the American people lasted until, we'll just say, 1991. Now we can talk about the dumbing down of the American population through the 1970s and through the 1990s until the 1990s, when I studied to be a teacher. Well, it was all about multiculturalism and Americanism. Teaching anything about America was bad, and you had to teach about all these other countries to kids who are going to not even care because they're American kids. But no, we were told you must teach multiculturalism. So they really just wanted to divide and conquer these kids even from the beginning, and they wanted to make sure that people were pointed out as different. So these young, like, African American kids could say, oh, I'm different because I'm African American, because they told me that in school, I'm different. So that was the first part of divide and conquer, and that started in the late 80s, and it's still going on today. They made sure they got a certain kind of teacher into the school systems that had a certain political and religious, no religious bent whatsoever. So this is what they did to our schools, and so that basically you have a completely dumbed down population. Now, the war on Americans really got going when George Bush got into office, and they took off on the 9/11 War on Terror and the Patriot Act. Patriot Act again, war on terror. It's really a war on the American people is what it is. But if we also go back to the war on drugs, that was a war on African American people, and that was a war that George Bush's father conducted through his importation of cocaine and weapons and arms deals with Iran and whatever. So all of these wars on the American people are going on. And by the 1990s, they had basically the Soviet Union is gone, so the American people have won. Yay, right? Well, no, because in 1994 they passed GATT, they passed NAFTA, and so then the floodgates opened and immigration just took over the United States. It came legally, it came illegally, and nobody did anything to stop it except that they passed hate crime legislation. And the hate crime legislation is basically says that any white or Caucasian does something to somebody or says something or whatever because of their race or whatever, or their, which is basically somebody's opinion, which is everybody has the right to, that white person will be punished. But no non-white person has ever been punished for a hate crime. Not one. So what is the hate crime legislation about? It's hate, it's white hate. So, and it's just against the law for whites to say anything about it. So probably what I'm saying here, by telling you the truth of this, is probably going to be illegal for some reason. So it's not about being white or whatever, it's just about culture. And the real fact is that it is not the white hate that the government is about. And it's not the white hate that the corporations are about. The government and the corporations hate black people. They want to replace black people in the factories. They want to replace black people in the jobs. And by getting them incited and calling racism, they can fool them into thinking that, oh, this is really good for us because now we're all homeless. And it's really hard for us to get jobs because now you get a job if you're from China or Japan or Asia or wherever, Africa, whatever, Belize. You can get a job wherever you want over African Americans now, and of course over white Americans. And the government passed this legislation to ensure that. So how is this not a war on the American people? All right, so we have gotten all the way through the Cold War. The banks have taken over. Now we're 20 billion, well, much more in debt. And then in the last election in 2016, we had two candidates, one who was basically selling out the country, who had gotten a number of Americans killed and was going around with a pay-for-play scheme and promising everybody, you give me money because I'm going to be elected the president. And then that didn't happen, and people are talking about they were going to have a coup against Barack Obama if Trump hadn't won. So now we have a president who's saying, we are going to fight as Americans, we're going to stick together, the American people deserve to be together. But the banks, the divide and conquer, the corporations, the left, the communists, the Democrats, they're all on board fighting. Because what they want and what they are so close to, look at Europe, those people have no rights whatsoever. They voted years ago to secede from the European Union, and they will never do it because the Europeans have no rights. And this is what they want to bring back to America. They want to bring back the old style, what George Bush called the New World Order, which is really the old world order, where the sycophants in the royal families and these major capitalists like Gates and Bezos, who have no social conscience whatsoever other than making money and causing trouble. They don't really want to help anybody out, and they certainly don't want to help out the United States. So this is what we've come to. Now, do I care? I don't, because as I say many times, people get what they deserve. And if you don't look at history and see how this integration of entire, I mean, we have 15 to 20 million illegal immigrants in the United States, 15 to 20 million. It's a whole entire country here in our country, and how are we ever going to get rid of them? So we have been invaded, and I wasn't here to do it. I was overseas in the Middle East doing my own thing. So you guys let it happen, and you're going to have to deal with it. And I'm afraid the consequences, as we see, are very harsh, because the violence and the rhetoric is getting ramped up by the violent communist left as they use Nazi tactics because they are Nazis. So this is why people hate Trump so much. He is not part of this thing where they just want to bring in so many people. They just divide the United States, and they make us like the Balkans, and there's like 6 different countries here all fighting against each other and all needing armaments and whatever. So it's the politics of fear, it's the politics of death. Look at the media, look what they show you on TV, look what they show you on Netflix, look what they show you everywhere. It's all death and violence, and that's for a reason, because that's probably what you're going to get. So this is the end of part 2 of the immigration issue and the reality of it being the war on Americans. Now, if you have an opinion about it, please leave a comment. This is not about racism. We love everybody at Deceptions of the Ages News, but we just know that human nature doesn't change. And I've been in a lot of Muslim countries, and I've been around the world, and I know that they want to use our system against us. It's why I ran for the United States Senate. So, this is Deceptions of the Ages News, and we'll see you next time.